They took the state and the city and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal elections, Southern District and Washington, dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen, ever, to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen, this is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Marchand, who was responsible for another case that was also brought. It destroyed the life of a very good man, by the way. Destroyed the life of a very good man who went to prison once, and then they just put him in prison again because they said he lied. He didn't lie. I looked at the statements he made. In fact, he didn't remember something, and they put him in jail. Again, they've destroyed him. With me for many years, he was an honorable person. He was an honest man. And if you look at what he did, supposedly, it never happened. There's never been anything like this. Over the education of his grandchildren. Over, he didn't report that he had a car or 2 cars on his income. I don't know. I wonder how many people here have cars. I wonder how many people said, oh, gee, I have a car that's worth X dollars. How do you even figure it? And I guess you do have to report it, but I would say probably almost nobody does. Nobody even thinks about it. They put this man, they destroyed this man, but they put him in jail again because they didn't want him to testify. They didn't want him to testify. That's why he went to jail. They put him in jail twice. He's 77 years old. Now, normally I'd say that's an old guy, but I don't feel 77. Nobody ever says that about me. I'd like them to say, gee, we have to have a little sorrow for this man, because they just don't say that about me, but maybe I'm better off that way. I think I'm probably better off that way. But they put him in jail twice. And you have to see what they put him in jail. And he was threatened by the judge. This man was told, you're going to get 15 years in jail if you don't give up Trump. And he was told that. You're going to get 15 years in jail. And he made a plea deal because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life. And he was told that viciously. We're living in a fascist state. He was told that viciously. So you can go to jail for 4 months, 5 months, or you can get 15 years in jail. So do a plea. Almost who wouldn't do that plea? Everyone does those pleas. It's a horrible thing. There's a whole group of lawyers that fight that. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But they destroyed his life. So many other things. You look at Southern District didn't want to bring the case. Nobody wanted to bring the case. And then you know who didn't want to bring the case most of all? Is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it. But then he brought it. And they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer, and by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, he got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals, and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions, and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to three election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal, and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually. wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money, and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on 3 things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert, #1 rated in the country, who was going to testify. He took a plea on 3 things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the 3 things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And this should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. The media called him a fixer, or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like, for instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him, and a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watched Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin, all very talented people, great people, many more. And they don't know me, essentially. They don't know me. They're legal scholars and experts. But I look at them. I watched Turley this morning saying, there's no crime here. Everybody says there's no crime here, except for this DA that's got the city out of control with crime. It's absolutely out of control. So we have an NDA that was signed.